recorded live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the January 30th, the last show for January in 2015, the new year. This is the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. My name is William Hayashi, and I'll be your host for tonight. Our special guest is Michael A. Gill Branion, and he's coming to. Where are you coming to us from, by the way?
Fort Hood, Texas.
Which Texas? I'm sorry.
Fort Hood. It's an Army base.
Oh, okay. Does that suggest that you're in the service, or do you have a family member in the service?
It suggests that my wife is a soldier and I get beat down every night. That's what happens.
You know, usually you have to pay extra for that. Do me a favor. See if you could find just a little bit better place in there where you get a little better reception, because you're kind of warbling in and out, and I want people to hear you as well as they can. Okay.
Okay. Give me 1 second.
No. Oh no, that was perfect. Actually, that sounded perfect. All right.
Okay.
So anyway, you're an author. What else do we have here? And with a new book just out. What other kinds of creative talents do you have? I mean,
okay.
I'll give you go ahead and answer that. I'm going to put out the links in the chat room while you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I'm just a man who writes. There's a lot of writers out there. I'm sure they can relate to that. I've written some screenplays and some novellas and some short stories and some books. And I like to stay in the science fiction genre and fantasy genre as much as possible.
Sure. And you know, was this something, you know, well, first of all, let's start out, because before the show started, Michael told me that he actually, did you grow up here in Chicago? Were you born here? How long were you here?
Oh, I'm a cornbread-fed Illinois boy. You know, I grew up there in Illinois, and I was in Chicago at King High School for about a semester. I bounced around. I'm born in Bloomington, Illinois, lived in Champaign-Urbana with my mom, went to Chicago, stayed there, went to King High School for a semester. You know, everybody has, you know, the obstacles in life, and so that was
right.
Those were trying times for me. So when you said you were from Kenwood, I could relate, because that's right near King High School from back then when I was there.
King High School handed out the best football butt whooping I ever got, and I'll tell you what happened real quick. The week before, we played South Shore, and I was the quarterback, and I was only like about 135 pounds, but the reason why I got to be quarterback was I could throw very, very far. And so when we played South Shore, we pulled what was called the wait a minute play. And what happened was everybody would get to the line, and then instead of saying hike, I would say wait a minute, and everybody would just stand up and kind of look around like something was wrong. Meanwhile, the end was flying down the field, and the center had given me the ball, and I threw the ball down to him, and no one was covering him because they thought the play was stopped. So we won the game. We got the touchdown. We won the game, and we beat South Shore, which was good because they had a really good team. All right. So the next Friday, we played Kennedy King. You went to Kennedy King, right?
Yeah,
or
I went
King?
to.
Yeah.
King, you know, I think it's a preparatory high school now, but it was
right. So
yeah.
So we were down 2 touchdowns, and I did the wait a minute play, and about half a second after I said wait a minute, one of your guys came and he flattened me. I mean, he flattened me, and I'm seeing like Tweety Bird and the stars and all of that. and he was kind of grinning at me, and he pulled me up, got me up off the ground. He said, "You obviously didn't think we read the paper," and that was something. I mean, he had just tore me up. So that's my only experience with your school that I can actually remember. But I mean, when you're in and out of Chicago, when you're going to a school in Chicago, you know, did you find that like a conducive? Because I don't know very much about what King was like back then, but I mean, were they a good art school? Were you into writing at that age? I mean, about how early did you know that you were, you know, you identified the fact that you wanted to do some writing?
At King High School I was in survival mode. King was rough back then. That was a little rougher time. We're talking about the 80s. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah. So it was back in let's see, about 81, around there.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Yeah, that was survival mode. But I started writing. Actually, I came into writing a little later, after the military. After, in the 90s, I started writing.
Okay. And just to let people know, I mean, you were in the military yourself?
I was in the Marine Corps. Yeah. My wife has done much better than I did. I did my stint and got out.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but my wife, she's still in. She's active duty. She's awesome.
Mhm.
So I started writing back in the 90s. My first book was called Paradox, and I wasn't a great writer then.
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody. I mean, unless you've got a hellaciously potent ego, I don't think anybody comes out of the box and thinks maybe this is the best thing since sliced bread. I'm very, very anxious to even edit my first book and put out, like the second edition, that sort of thing. But when you thought to write a book, because that's a pretty significant thing. Well, first of all, is it in the sci-fi genre?
Yes, Paradox was in sci-fi. All my books have been in the sci-fi fantasy genre. Yes.
Okay, and so when you were growing up, were you? I mean, it sounds like you were at least attracted to the genre. Was it for both books and movies? Did you read a lot of science fiction and see the movies, or how did that work out for you?
I read a lot of Tom Swift. That book with the atomic symbol on it before it was a bad thing.
I had the whole series and lost it in an act. But I had every single one of those books. I mean, those were great for me. And so you read those, and were you drawn to the movies too?
Yeah, I'm drawn to the movies, Star Wars. I played a lot of space opera. I don't know if anybody remembers that game. I was a big time gamer, and I grew up with Timothy Bradstreet, who draws for Punisher, and he draws Punisher and like for the game Vampire, and he does a lot of other stuff. I mean, if you look him up, Shadowrun, he draws for that. So I grew up with him when we were big time gamers. So right. I think that's what really set me into the scientific fancy stuff, watching Star Trek and those things.
And so, I mean, it wasn't just a passive thing. You obviously were building up to getting, becoming a writer. When you started writing, it was post-military?
Yeah, it was after that, and actually it was funny. A pharmacist I met, I was telling him an idea for a story. He was a pharmacist friend of mine, and we would play tennis, and he would just kill me. He had the ace out of this world back then. His name was David. He would kill me. But he said, go ahead, write it. He's the one who convinced me to start writing. So I started writing, and I never stopped.
That's pretty cool. And when you started writing, I mean, when you sit down and say, okay, I'm going to write a book, what? It's not so much that you said that, but what was it that you put together to make a great story? How did you, did you come up with a story that just suggested itself to you, and then that it was easy to write? What was your process like when you were going through that first book?
The first book process was I was very honest with myself in the beginning. That I don't have a lot of stories to tell. I didn't feel then I did. I still don't feel now. I'm not like a Stephen King writer who can just sit down and crank out book after book after book. But
right.
So there's just certain. I think everybody hears the story in them that's calling to be told. The characters, they start telling you, hey, don't stop, don't put me down, finish me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the process. You have an idea, you run with it, it starts to blossom into other ideas, and it blends into other things that you can relate to in life, and so you put it down. Put it down on paper, I mean.
Right. And so tell us a little bit about the story of your first book. What's the plot?
The plot is about Tiffany Lowe, who knows who knows things before they happen. She explains it like time sort of. She has a communication with time. Time is intelligent and allows her to see all the possibilities at once. And this was way before that show, Knowing, with Nicolas Cage.
Okay.
Okay. But if she tells anybody or tries to tell anybody what's going to happen next, then everything shuts off. Time shuts off and stops communicating to her. And so, like a punishment. So
okay.
People are with her because she knows what's going to happen. They want her to tell, but she doesn't. And she's part of a team that is designed to be a failsafe in case Earth is ever going to be destroyed or some type of irrevocable damage will come to the Earth. They're the failsafe to be shut off the Earth and launched into space for humanity to survive. And that's basically what the book's about.
Very cool. And so as you're putting together your characters and your plot line, what's the main driver for the story? Is it the characters and then figuring out what they're going to do, or do you have a plot and then you make your characters dance to the plot?
In the beginning, I wrote the characters to the story, so it was a plot. But now, as I've grown as a writer, to me, in my opinion, I know other people have, write different ways, but to me, it's all about the character. It's all about the character. I write character to character, and something I want to share with you. I was at San Diego Comic-Con, and I was listening to a panel, and they had these writers up there, and a guy asked a question to one of the panel members, and he said, I can write great scenes, but it's hard for me to connect them all. And I knew exactly where he was, and the answer to that is you really have to have people use your characters to connect the extraordinary scenes you create and have your characters reflect or personify the different types of emotions, and you got to have them stick to those things. And let me give an example of that, like Kiefer Sutherland Kiefer Sutherland in 24. Right, we all watch 24, right? He'll kill his own mom to save the United States. He never sways from his purpose, no matter what. And so, to me, I mean, that's how hardcore you have to get with your character. No matter what comes, when it's a moral dilemma or if it's a character issue, they're always going to stay where they are.
Okay, and does that help you or hinder you in making three-dimensional characters?
I think it makes you have to become creative because and because you'll run into situations when you're writing a story, especially when something's 50,000 or 100,000 words long, where you have to come up with a good story where there's conflict, right? Conflict is a driver of a story. It helps it move. And so you have to find a way for your character to get through these conflicts. I'm not saying work around them or always come out on top either. I'm saying just make it. Make it through the conflict.
I get you, yeah.
Yeah,
I know, I get you, yeah. Okay, well, so this kind of begs the question. I mean, when you started writing your first book, did you have any kind of training, any kind of education? Did you read books about writing books? When you set off, because this is a pretty significant thing. When somebody, I think we both know that there are many, many times more people who have started a book and not finished it than there are who started a book and finished. So, I mean, when you decided to write a book, did you have, did you have some classes behind you, some education, some mentors? I mean, what? Because I think it's a significant thing when someone actually goes through and writes a book.
Yeah, my first book, other than my wife, who supports me through anything, right? No, I hadn't had any classes. I hadn't graduated from college yet, and
literature or what have you, yeah.
No, my first book, and my first book, if you read it, it reflects that. But I think the best help and mentorship I got through the book was Michael Steinberg out of Chicago. He lives in Winnetka.
Mm-hmm.
And I had looked him up. I felt I was ready to get an agent for the book, and you're all excited because you finished it. You're doing great. And I talked to him, and then you get these feelings that you do on your first book, like you're apprehensive. You think somebody will take your idea. You're worried about money, all these little things. And I was talking to him on the phone. And the reason why he took my call, he said, was because another person woke him up in the middle of the night asking about a book, and he ignored it, and that book became a bestseller, so he wasn't going to not talk to me for that reason alone. And then when I explained to him, my feelings and everything about the book, he said, you know what, Mike, let me give you some free advice. If you're worried about your stuff getting stolen, or you're worried about money, or here's what I think you should do. Put your book in a glass model. Put it above your fireplace. Keep it right there. Because, books are meant to be read and shared. And, if you're worried about all these things, and if you only got one story and this is your best and all you want to do, then I say keep it and put it on your mantle.
Sure.
And that really woke me up. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. You got to share your work. You got to be exposed. You have to put it out there. You can't worry about who might do this or that to it, and you got to have more than one idea, and you got to keep going.
And you have to execute well. I mean, if a lot of people. Okay, let's take a genre. How many zombie books are out there?
Oh, a lot.
They're countless, but not all of them rise to the height of maybe World War Z or something that's been on a bestseller list. So I mean, execution is just as important as having a good story, because I mean you could have a great story and not be able to put it together very well. Well, it's like the guy who has a great joke but doesn't know how to tell it.
Right.
Let me ask you this: you weren't up here at all when you wrote that, were you? You didn't live
Chicago,
in this
yes,
area.
I was. Actually, I was living on Toohey Avenue. On one side of Toohey is Niles, and on the other side of Toohey is Chicago.
Yeah.
And I was living with my wife. And we were out Toohey when I wrote that. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, because all the writers who I've met in Chicago, at least up until a little while ago, they were all convinced, especially, the black writers I met, they were going to get their book to Oprah, and then Oprah was going to make them, a star. You didn't have that kind of notion, did you?
I think all writers do. But hey, what I can honestly say is, there are people, and they have, that are A-listers in music, in acting, who have reached down to help me. So I understand what you're getting at, but I got to also say on the other side of it is people who see you are serious about writing and that you are passionate about your story will come down from the mountain to help you reach the top. That leads me to, I have a lot of thank yous I want to say while I'm on the show, along with thanking the Black Science Fiction Society. But I've developed 4 networks that help me get through writing day to day and help me move forward. And there's some people they have really, when I was, to me, most people who don't know me would probably consider me a statistic, right? But like Cherie Renee Thomas, who communicates with me, who wrote Dark Matter, who's been so supportive. Sophia Stewart, the mother of the Matrix, who writes, who were LinkedIn friends, Facebook, who talks to me. Keith Hamilton Cobb, the actor from Andromeda, the TV series. Don Salmon, you probably never heard of him, but he's part of that machinery that works in the background of Hollywood. Billy Bob Thornton, I cannot say enough. Who, when I was in 2008, when Eagle Eye was all over the bulletin boards, and it was the #1 movie in the country. He met with me. And I think he connected with me because he came up from a very poor background. So there are people who will reach down and will help you. So, I mean, I understand that
very few people do it alone, and
right.
and even the people who are close to you, who give you the kind of support that keeps you going, sometimes they can be the most significant help. Even if all of a sudden you become a bestseller or something like that, the people around you, if you have that support, first of all, it keeps you writing because, you get that shared energy. And second of all, if they're very honest with you, you get a good evaluation of what kind of writer you are. And maybe, can I improve here? Can I do better there? Does this make sense? And having it sounds like you had quite a tapestry of Americana who were significant in helping you get where you got, and or at least encouraging you. And that sounds to me like it was invaluable.
Yes, it was, including another person, a fellow Chicagoan, Nichelle Nichols, who is Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek, who has her support. So, yeah, you create. I think it's very important for us to create some networks and to get out there and to connect in order to support their work. And it's not an overnight process. Like I said, I started this probably 1992, 93. It's 2015 now, and, I don't have a #1 bestseller. I'm not a mid-lister, when it comes to books. But I'm still going, but I've made some very strong connections, and I'm,
Okay,
so
I mean, let's talk a little bit about for your first book, your principal character was a woman. I'm always curious about how men write women and women write men. When you were constructing, your lead character like that, what kinds of things influenced making a three-dimensional female lead character?
Right. Well, the Paradox was, like I said, my first book, and I didn't do it well, and I learned a lot from that. My next two books were male characters, and then I think the supporting characters that were female helped me develop this book that's out now, which is a female character lead who is lesbian, and I've gotten a great. So far, I'm really surprised. I've gotten a great reviews and a lot of people, a lot of support from the LGBT community. So I think I nailed it. But it took a lot of years to learn to do that. And my wife in my ear saying, "No, we don't say that. We don't do that. And having to listen. I really try to be the greatest listener in the universe, and to listen to those around me and try to get the point they're trying to make so that I can get it right, especially when depicting women. Now, in this last story where I really feel I nailed it, this story that's out now, Integrated Synthesis, the main character is female. Her name's Kayla Cree. There's no sex acts. I didn't want to go down that road like 50 Shades of Grey. And you discover that she's gay because an ordeal has happened, which has driven her back to the wife she's walked out on for support.
Okay.
So it's through this problem that's arose that you're discovering everything. It's not because a love story is happening in front of your eyes or unfolding. And I think that I read a book called Heterosexual Plots, and lesbian narratives from Marilyn Faher, which helped me get a grasp on the crux of how to handle things like this when writing a strong female character. And just in my opinion, no strong female character should cry during the story or have a weak moment. I think it takes away from the capabilities that a woman is more than capable of doing.
Well, and you know, isn't that more of male affectation and a male perception, you know, a very stunted male perception of what makes a woman? I mean, when we talk about the stereotypical traits that are applied to female characters, you know, we see them all the time in television and movies especially. Those are the ones that are so galling to me. You know, you look at what the expectations are, and I like the fact that you don't fall victim to what I call it nonsense. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, you look at the dichotomy in American culture, and it's very sad. You know, where you and I would be principled and we stand up for ourselves, and you know we're go-getters, and you know whatever. You know, your typical American male is going to call a woman with the identical attributes a ballbuster. You know, and so, I mean, we already know the dichotomy is not good. The way we look at the, you know, the way we treat the sexes in this country is really, well, it's not good. But
yeah.
when you go counterculture like that, it sounds to me like the people who are reading your books find that to be refreshing and not noble, but you know, it shouldn't be even thought as noble. You know, to write women the way women really are should be commonplace.
Yeah, it should be the norm.
Not. Yeah, it really should.
Yeah.
When I think about, you know, I'm looking at your books on Amazon right now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, by the way,
thank God for Amazon. Oh man, thank God for Amazon. Oh, jeez.
Well, yeah, you say that now, but when we only have Amazon and Google 10 years from now and everything else is going, well, I mean, you know, Amazon is being very smart, and you know, it's like Amazon is behaving like the publishing houses. You know, all the major publishing houses are going and buying all the independents, you know, because the goal is to consolidate to such an extent that, you know, you can get as much of the publishing market as you can. And it's not always beneficial to authors or even to the public. You know, look at the whole price fixing thing that Amazon went through with the two publishers and also with iTunes. So, but in terms of getting your name out there right now, man, you know, if you can get there and get some attention, that can only help.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Like, exposure is the name of the game, but I have to give Amazon some more credit than that. I'm going to slightly disagree with you, just because I remember writing the Writers' House, the New Yorker, the Authors Guild, and getting the rejection letters. I remember what they said about you're not a writer unless you have a trade you're published in a trade publication. Now they've changed that wording because of Amazon. I remember, like I said, I've been doing this since like the early 90s, writing and trying to get my stuff out there, just like J.K. Rowling and stuff. And I'll give you an example of where Amazon is different and why you should take advantage of it.
Cool. Please do.
Okay. Amazon had the Amazon Breakthrough Novel Award, right? And they changed it to the Kindle Scout program. But Amazon recognized that some number one best-selling authors got rejected through that ABNA. Let's take a little hard look at Colleen Hoover, who's a number one best-selling author who did awesome. She went through the ABNA and didn't even make it through the first round. And one of the stories that she presented there went on to become a number one bestseller. So Amazon changed up and made it, they changed it so that it could have a more of a level playing field. and to get the viners who were in that process, and anybody who's went through the Amazon Breakthrough Novel Award knows what I mean when I'm referring to the viners, the people in the forums who were the reviewers. They got rid of those gatekeepers. Now, in the publishing houses have gatekeepers that prevented a lot of opportunity for people who are good writers or have something to give. So that's where Amazon's different. And I liken them to the Writers Guild of America. Because, Writers Guild of America West, they have a point system, but anybody can register. Anybody can sign up. Anybody can take care of it. You don't have to have something, with this lofty type of elitist type thing first before you're able to be a member and take advantage of some of their resources and programs. So that's where Amazon's different. Amazon, you're right. They're playing it smart. I understand the market share. I know I've looked at the collusion case. I read U.S. economic report, But where Amazon is right and benefits all writers is that they're putting the writer's work out there first. Whether it fails or not, anybody who writes is taking a chance. You don't know if it's going to go or not.
Oh,
if you get
sure. Right.
When it comes to marketing and promotion, you're in the mix. Good luck. But at least you're getting that exposure. You're getting out there for a very little cost. If you have the product, they'll put it out there for you. And Bantam Books isn't going to do that. Random House isn't going to do that. Okay, these big boys.
Amazon has the benefit of being in the part of culture, common culture now, where you have far more traffic, far more eyes available to look at whatever it is that you have. And so I see exactly what you're talking about, and look how many users Amazon has. So it does give you the benefit of a forum that you simply can't get with a typical brick and mortar operation. And for newer authors, that's got to be an advantage. I mean, I self-publish, and right now I'm responsible for all of my marketing. Well, that's a pretty expensive endeavor. It's very hard to get out there like that. But with a program like what Amazon has, and we'll have to see over time whether it turns out to be as beneficial over the long haul as it can be. I would say that it provides a leg up for people who don't have a lot of resources. Tell us a little bit about how you discovered the program, and tell us a little bit about what pros and cons you weighed that made it so compelling.
Well, that's a great question. That's great. I like those two questions. How I discovered Amazon was actually they contacted me through an email, I think, after I published originally with Author House.
Okay.
Which Author House originally was myfirstbook.com, or First Books, and then it changed its name to Author House. And then Amazon contacted me after that and basically said, "Hey, we're CreateSpace. We have these contests. We have Kindle Direct Publishing too. We want to work with you, and we can basically put your book out here for free. Call this number." And so that's where I discovered Amazon.
Okay.
And like you said, it was a good deal. What compels me to use Amazon is, like I said, I've been blessed enough to have some good people or meet good people, like the people I mentioned before, and I really want to thank them. I have a strong family, my wife and my two young boys, that I want to thank them. They help. But people like who I've ran into, I've got to pick their brain a little bit, like Janice Dickinson and Gina Wong, who's director out of Hong Kong in the UK. Henning Ludvigsen, who's an international digital artist for Star Wars board games and Call of Cthulhu board games, and so many others who have said, this is their process for doing it in their field. And these are the things you need to pay attention to, Michael, and this is how it works, and this is how it goes. And so basically developing a business sense of how the entertainment industry in a lot of different facets works is what drove me there. And also, I got to tell you, I have a strong system support network for writing and doing my screenplay stuff, and it's really key to like 3 people. Nadine Hamden is with the Euphoric Media Group. She's the agent of Nia Peoples and Sheila E. Bobby Bublé was also one of her clients. She's my agent. Joseph Bavino, you've probably seen him on P90X. He's the shoulders guy in that series. He's my entertainment attorney. And Yapa Bendanda with the Welks Music Group, he's a music insider. Having these people around you, showing you the direction of where the waves where you should ride the wave, to, has brought me over into Amazon, and listening to them. And I've seen the improvement. I've seen the more attention. I've seen I make more connections, and I move forward.
Mhm. A lot of new authors, and obviously you're not new, but I'm just saying a lot of new authors are not really aware at the beginning exactly how much time and effort it takes to do the marketing part. I think, I generally think of it as like an 80-20 thing, where 80% of what you do is the business of doing business, which includes marketing and things like that, and 20% of it is the actual time that you spend doing your writing. For you, does Amazon give you, excuse me, does Amazon provide you with better business opportunities, support, and things like that, and which allows you to spend more time on other things? I mean, is it a lot of help? Is it a little help? Let people know who have not taken a look at the program.
Well, I like to describe it as key help. Amazon gives me an opportunity to get my work out there, and it gets me exposure, which are the 2 things that after my book is done or anybody writes their book and it's sitting there, you really need. You got to get it out there, and you got to have the opportunity for something to happen to it. I really want to go back to Colleen Hoover, who got missed by Amazon, but still got picked up because she did their process. Mm-hmm. Okay? So exposure is very key, and having the opportunity is priceless. If you're writing publishing houses and you're getting rejection letters, there's no opportunity. If you submit your book to Amazon and they put it on a website and they help you design your cover if you don't have one, and they'll put it in all these mediums, audio, Kindle, or Notepad or iPad or whatever can bring it up.
Right.
They'll put it on websites. You know what? That's exposure, and you need that in order to grow as a writer, because that's where you get your best critique too. That's where you can get that. Hey, you know what? I read your story, and this is all wrong. People will tell you. I can't follow you there. This was wrong. You needed a comma here. I don't understand why did you put 2 prepositions together? So.
Sure.
You need that kind of feedback to grow as a writer, and you're not going to get it unless your stuff is out there and you're exposed.
So when you look at the path you took, Amazon is a good partner for you and one that you would well recommend to somebody else, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Okay. So you've got what, 4 books up on Amazon right now? 1, 2, 3. I see 4, And you mentioned you had a fifth one. Is this one that you just finished up, or is this
It's the
something
creature.
that...
There is a book. I didn't do it through Amazon. I didn't put it up. It's also a screenplay. It's called The Creature.
Okay.
And that is...
Tell us... Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, tell us a little bit about it.
The Creature is about... It's a strong female character. Again, it's about a hero in history who keeps reappearing, a female hero, and we know her by different names. Cleopatra. She comes back whenever there's a problem and humanity's facing a serious problem.
Okay.
And they don't know that she's this ancient being that's here to help guard the Earth, but she's Isis, and so you learn that later on in the script and the play and stuff. And actually, you can see the Creature screenplay and part of the storyboard at AmazonStudios.com if you go there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what it's about.
And obviously, it sounds like you have an interest in film.
Yeah, I think as a writer, you have to think long term. Just from I hate to use the word legal. I don't know if it's a legal standpoint, but just to be prepared for if let's say something you write catches a wave. As it was explained to me by a pretty famous person, your stuff is going to be used to make money. Whether you like it or not, whether you're alive or dead. And I mean, that's how it was put to me. Mm-hmm. So I think when you do need to pay attention to that. If you catch a wave or something goes good or big, there's a strong possibility you'll find yourself in Hollywood. Yeah. I mean, look at the J.K. Rowling story. Look at some of these others who have written. Look at 50 Shades of Grey. It took off fast and was in Hollywood. Okay, so yeah.
Don't get me started on that book. Okay.
Gone Girl, another one. My mom made me read Gone Girl.
Well, no, yeah. I mean, and then you have all of the Cinderella stories about people getting options, and I guess the one that sticks in my mind was, before the book The Horse Whisperer was published, I believe it was Robert Redford. Yeah, it was Robert Redford who optioned it for $7 or $8 million. I mean, so if you attract that kind of attention, that's the other thing. You should darn well be ready for it, because you don't know. I mean, everybody wants to believe that they've done something well, but like you said, if someone can make money off of your intellectual property, they're going to figure out a way to do it, either by paying you what you want to be paid, or giving you the concessions you want to have.
Right, that's true. Yeah, I mean, Robert Redford read about the Horse Whisperer in a New Yorker article and fell in love with it. Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah. Yeah,
and so right now you've got the one screenplay, right? Or do you have more than one?
Yeah, The Forgotten Prince was also a screenplay. That's up on Junto Box with Forrest Whitaker's. Like, he helps produce films from unknowns at Junto Box Films. You can see The Forgotten Prince there. So it came out as a book and a screenplay. Now, as a screenwriter, I'm still where I am, trying to still get it right. I use Script as the software that I use, which is an online software to do my screenplays. There's others out there. I like Script. That works for me. So, yeah. And I've done some concept type scripts for some people. And so I'm getting the hang of it.
Has anything been produced yet and turned into film?
I can't say too much, but I can tell you I wrote something, and the rights of it went to. Do you know Kelsey Grammer?
not personally, but
he had that TV show.
I know. Yeah, no, he had Frasier, and as a matter of fact, the guy who played his father, James Mahoney, the guy who played his father, is going to be in a movie that I have written and I'll be producing here in Chicago. Oh yes, I do know who he is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he owns the rights to something that I was writing, and this was when I was first coming in, so I was given prompts to write towards.
Okay.
With an organization called Red Baron Films out of Manhattan Beach.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Okay.
And so there's a very good possibility that something that you wrote will be produced?
Oh, no. Like I said, these were like concept ideas. Sometimes in Hollywood, how it works is sometimes people ask for what's called notes. Okay?
Yes, I know.
Which are like the concept pieces. I did some concept stuff for people who wanted something similar to the creature from the Black Lagoon. I've seen some things happen that weren't part of my work, what I did, but it was what I was imagining. And you see connections, but it's good. I mean, you get out there, you write stuff down, people pay you for it, you move on, and then you see things later on down the road that look, you're not the only one who has an idea. You can't, be that way with it. But, I had a concept similar to Lost Girl. And I saw that Lost Girl now does really well.
Okay.
So it helps you know that you're on the right track when you see things like that.
Well, there's also, what do they call that? The semi-scientific name is called a morphic field, and that all humanity is part of a morphic field. So when you have one volcano movie that is being made, then 3 others all of a sudden get made. Or, actually a more scientific example is, you have monkeys on one island, and they learn how to use a particular tool, and monkeys on another island that is completely divorced from them all of a sudden at a very similar time frame also learn how to use the same tool. And I think in large part, we could maybe talk about that from a psychic perspective, but it also could just be simple copycat kind of thing. So I mean, if you've had a great idea and somebody executes it and then you start seeing it elsewhere, I think it's a testament to the fact that people think, like you said at the very beginning, that if your intellectual property can make them money, you're going to see your intellectual property out there, in the universe, So you have certain things that you write. Now, that's another good question. The screenplays that you're writing, are these reality based? Are they sci-fi? Are they,
sci-fi.
Are you still being drawn to the sci-fi genre, huh?
Yeah, science fiction. Yeah.
Yeah.
I stay in sci-fi things. This book here now on Kindle Scout, Integrated Synthesis. It's light sci-fi. It's not hardcore sci-fi.
Right.
Yeah, think of like a female Jason Bourne type thing. So.
That would be Assault, wouldn't it? SALT, Angelina Jolie.
Yeah. It's like, think of it like that. Only this person has powers, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, Kayla Cree has powers, so not. Salt doesn't have powers, but she's good. I like the Salt. That was a great movie.
I got kind of confused because the first version I saw was the director's cut. And then I actually saw the regular theatrical release, and I thought, I actually thought I had a stroke, and that my memory was going until I looked closely at the because I didn't know. All right, so we've seen you. You're definitely a writer. You're definitely a screenwriter, and you've been pretty persistent. You've had, it looks like, a 20-year career in writing, right? Did you start in early 90s, mid 90s?
Early 90s. Around
Early
1990.
90s. So you've been at it for 20 years, and you do have a body of work to show for it. For you, what are the easy parts of writing? And then I'll ask you what are the hard parts. But when you're crafting a story, what's the easy part of crafting a story and getting started on it and getting it done?
The ending. And the reason why I say that is because I don't know about other writers, but when I have the big idea that comes to me to write about, it took me years to figure out that what I'm imagining is the ending. Not necessarily how it all begins. I might spend a little time on how this character begins and stuff, but in my mind, when I'm looking at the picture of it, it's always the crescendo. It's the climactic part, right? And so that's the easy part to come up with. You got to write to get there. And the habit that I've developed now, after these years of writing, I've learned to do is when you're writing a book, write the last chapter as you're writing chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that's my process now. Now, actually, I've branched into writing the last chapter and next to last chapter, because I've learned you have to have something to write to. You have to be writing towards something. And that something you're writing towards is the answers and the pinnacle
resolution.
Right.
Yeah, the resolution. Yeah. No, I mean, that's exactly how I write. My first book, I came up with actually the last line in the book. And then I went and initially wrote, with my dumbass self, I wrote about 330,000 words in the first draft of the manuscript to get to that one last line in the book. And fortunately for me, I found an author who pulled 100,000 words out, or 110,000 words out, and made it a little more palatable. But I have to agree with you entirely. If you don't know where the destination is, it's got to be hard as hell to put the plot together. I mean,
right.
Logically, I think that's probably the best way to do it. Some people go, well, I've got a great situation, I've got great characters, let's see where it takes us. And I think I would be, personally, I don't think I'm a good enough a writer to do it in that method, because I think I would be unsettled not knowing exactly where it's going.
Right.
So having that ending is very important to you. And as far as character development, do you take, and I think maybe this is a stupid question, because, I mean, how could you not, but do you take characteristics, attributes, behavior, and things like that from people around you, and that helps you kind of round out your characters or helps you create your characters, or do you have another process that you do for that?
No, absolutely. There are characteristics, attributes, and behaviors from people I've met. Absolutely, and I've had a wonderful opportunity of being in several places across the United States and out of the United States a couple of times. So, so yeah, I've ran into some people, and so that makes it fun, right?
Yeah. And so conversely, what's the most difficult part of putting together a manuscript, of writing a manuscript?
For me, now, at this process, with this last book, I think it was very therapeutic. I grew, and I'm learning that I'm more of a narrative writer. I need to stay writing narrative, like a person who's writing their diary, talking to the audience.
Okay.
Is more my strong suit. I'm not in The Hobbit, where Tolkien can describe everything that's happening, and there's other writers who are great at it, describe the whole room in 7 or 8 pages. I'm just not there. I like meter. I like the pace to keep going. I like that push. I like it to be sort of fast. I want people to get to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, and I always want something else coming.
Mhm.
And that's why I think I like books like What Makes Sammy Run. I liked Gone Girl because it was like that. It had that pace of something else coming. He's talking to you, telling you what's happening. She's talking to you, telling what's happening. There's pace to it. It works. I know I don't want to bring up 50 Shades of Grey with you again, but it's the same thing. It's got that.
No, it's okay. Yeah.
It's got that meter.
Go ahead.
It's got a fast meter. It's going from the next thing to the next thing. It's a person talking to you. She's talking about what's happening, but it's talking to you. It's like a person writing in their diary. It doesn't have to describe every single little thing, but you're getting the gist and the story's moving. I think that's where I am. That fits the way I write.
Okay. But what? I guess I'm wondering. It sounds to me like, well, you've had 20 years to hone your process, and it sounds like you're very, very comfortable with how you put a story together. What do you do in the event, or have you ever experienced writer's block?
No.
How lucky are you, man? All right, so I envy you there.
But I don't have I don't have a million stories.
Right.
I only have a few stories to tell. I've said that to people, and they look at me strange, but it's true. Like, if I come up with a new idea, I attach it to an idea I've already been pondering. I don't try to make it a different story in and of itself. I try to attach it to make it one whole story. And the example I do at high schools because I've been asked this question before. And the example I do when I'm talking to students who have invited me to talk, I say, okay, let's imagine I have them create a story. Like these one kid's created a story. There's a lady who's raising rabbits on one corner. And they put these elements in. And then this other group of students created another story about a guy with dogs, like police dogs. And then I showed them, well, okay, now these are two different stories. I'm going to put them together. Sally has rabbits down. She lives one block down from where Bob, who raises police dogs, who trains police dogs up the street, lives. Sally's rabbits keep getting into Bob's yard. Bob's dog eats them up. Sally gets mad at it, right? About it.
Okay.
Sally's mad at Bob. Bob's dog accidentally bites one of Sally's kids. She has rabies now. Sally's mad about that. All these conflicts are happening. Sally's going to do something about Bob. Bob's going to do something about Sally. See, it's all building, and it's all one story. So when I have ideas, I put them all together in one story. I'm not trying to make a different story out of it.
Well, it sounds like your process is additive. When you come up with good ideas or good elements, you do your best to integrate them into something already to make it better.
Right.
Would that be fair to say? Yeah.
Yes.
And let's see, the dog had rabies or the rabbits had rabies? I forget which.
The dog bit Sally's kid and had rabies.
Okay, all right. I'm taking notes here, so I can, no, I'm not. I don't think I've never even had a dog in any of my stories. Doggone it. So
the kids came up with that. Kids are great. Kids are great resources to pick the brains of what they think and what that will give you some ideas. and do you give them part of the royalties, or? I'm just kidding. Okay, so that's a good question too, because when you discuss these story ideas with other people, are they very helpful in helping you craft your story? How much external influence do you think you utilize to put your stories together? Or do you have one of those overactive imaginations that really provides you with your nuts and bolts and some of the icing on the cake, to mix a metaphor? Okay, when I'm talking to kids at schools, I'm not using their ideas. It's all basic, because I only get like an hour, so they have certain elements they can put together, and it's like a basic story. Like in that example I gave you, it's nothing that I would write in one of my books you would find. But as far as how I gather the ideas, if I dream about something, I wake up, I write it down.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in a store and I see something happen, I go home and I write it down, and I accumulate all these ideas, from jokes or humor, something I found funny, to something I didn't think about when I was watching the news,
Right.
and all these different type of concepts. And then when I get to like 100, I look at them all in a spreadsheet, like an Excel spreadsheet I created, and I start putting them together as one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to make it all work. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, but life is a jigsaw puzzle like that, And so it can work, and it becomes a story.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, it sounds like a pretty good and easy process. Do you use any kind of online tools or anything like that? You mentioned that when you start doing a manuscript, sometimes you. No, I'm sorry, that was screenplays. Do you use any kind of online tools or digital tools to help you in your writing process?
Yes, I do. Grammar Jammer, which you can look
Mm-hmm.
up, which is pretty good. If I'm having a problem with the grammar and I'm not sure, I'll put it into Grammar Jammer. I use ProWritingAid.com.
Okay.
Because I've come to the point to where copy editing is expensive, and but I want my work to be tight, and I want to be able to do it myself. So I put a chapter at a time into ProWritingAid, which is a great resource, in
Mm-hmm.
my opinion. Again, my opinion. And I do the corrections from there that I see are necessary. Now, ProWritingAid is more, it's not going to let you get to, like the word gonna, Gonna, right?
Right.
It's going to say you should put going. Now it's up to you if you want to put going or gonna, and depends on the character who's talking and stuff. But I do like to make sure the diction and the sentence length and that are to a certain standard throughout the story, really tight, so that someone who reads the book can't say, well, you know what, you had a split infinitive here and you had this problem there. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
that, for me, that's important. But I've put in books, passages into ProWritingAid to see what pops up, to see what it's saying the mistakes are, and it'll have a ton of things it's saying. This is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and it's a bestseller. So you can't always go by that. You know what I mean?
Well,
It's a
yeah.
best-selling
I mean,
book. So,
literature, and I think grammar. They're associated buddies. They travel together, but I don't think. I mean, it's obvious, especially when you talk about dialogue. When you do dialogue, people don't speak grammatically.
right.
If you do a computer, or a science fiction future book, and you have people doing chat, I mean, the most egregious spelling and grammar errors, people use in chat, and they go, oh, well, I'm just trying to keep it brief and stuff like that. And so, but the big thing that people have to realize is that you will be judged by your writing, and you'll be judged by the quality of your writing. But if you're going to use, like you said, if you're going to use slang, if you're going to use gonna instead of going to, I believe it has to be consistent. You know, you want to build a consistent character. You don't want to flip back and forth and then force somebody to suspend disbelief. I actually, there's a couple books that helped me a lot. One, and they're both by John Gardner, who was a great American novelist. And one is called On Becoming a Novelist. And I'll try to get the link for that. But there are certain things that I think that any writer, and he wrote one for young novelists too. I'll grab both of those links. But the thing is that I think that the best authors are ones who certainly do their best to keep learning, even on the job. Do you still find yourself, fascinated with the art of becoming a better writer?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I that's where I want to become a better writer. Absolutely. That is the
Hmm.
drive. That keeps me going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other, the B part of that is, what do you think are the the things you're going to have to do to self-improve over a lifetime? Do you think that there's some classes to take? Do you think there's some reading to do, or is it really wide open? You take your inspiration and your education wherever it comes.
Um, I think writer's right? And I think that um, practice makes perfect,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
you just keep going. The education thing. I have mixed feelings. I really do. As far as I don't necessarily buy into that a person with a PhD is going to write a piece better than a person from a community college. So, but I do believe that if you keep working at any craft, you're bound to get better if you put your heart and you honestly work at it.
Yeah,
Um,
I tend to agree. I don't think education is the bulwark of whether or not you're going to be a great writer or not.
yeah.
I don't know if I'm a great writer. I seem to be a pretty good one, and I tell people, I come right out. I'm proud of the fact that I've got the finest sixth grade education that Chicago Public Schools could give me. Unless of course they call me a liar to my face. But anyway, but but no, I'm serious. I mean, I think it takes still a certain special individual who will consciously try to improve as they write. There are a lot of people who don't. There are a lot of people who just write what they write, and they've kind of plateaued at maybe where they may be from a literary point of view. I mean, Stephen King's books are not. They're a little bit better later on, but they're all written with the same similar voice. You know what I'm saying? So, and
Yeah.
that's not such a bad thing, because when people get used to your style, they're not looking for you all of a sudden to one day go from writing, a great book that you've written, and then finally end up, 20 years later, oh my God, this is the great American novel. You know what I mean? So I still think telling a good story is probably the best yardstick. Are you telling a great story, or are all your commas in the right place? I don't know. Some feel one way, some feel the other. As far as not going back to school, well, sometimes, what do they say? Those who do, and those who don't teach. So
Right.
maybe there is limited utility to that. Hang on a second. You're listening to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Program, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. And our special guest tonight, well, it's night now. I don't know what time you're going to listen to this. Um, well, you never know. I mean, people pick it up as a podcast all the time. So, but this is Michael Gill Branion, and he is an author and a screenwriter, and he's even done some screenwriting things or things associated with screenwriting that he can't even tell us about. That's how cool he is. In terms of, let's talk about. I mean, have you thought about converting your novels to screenplays? Do you see that in the future for your work?
I have mixed feelings with that. I tried that with The Forgotten Prince, and I just see. I don't know. I the jury for me is out on that one because it's hard. It's hard to translate something that you're close to in the book to a screenplay.
Right.
Yeah, it is. I did take on that challenge though with The Forgotten Prince. It did move. The Forgotten Prince did move forward and do some things, but
Mhm.
like I said, the jury's on there. I don't know if I'd be you. I think that team writing is beneficial in those types of situations. I think that sometimes it is not sometimes. I think all the time actually. It's good to have another writer or two or three to look at something and help get something together.
Yeah.
If you've written your book and you might need three experienced writers who do screenplays for a living in order to help get it there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've had the exact same thought. People keep telling me, oh, your series would make great movies. I see it as a movie. You write in a visual style, whatever they tell me. And they say, have you done the screenplay yet? And because of the length and the complexity of the novels I've written, I'm a good screenwriter. I mean, a fairly good screenwriter. I mean, the first 4 things I wrote got made. So when someone says that to me, they say, well, you do movies all the time, you do this, you do that. I'm just not good enough. I'm not good enough to do a screenplay of my own work because I don't know. I mean, everybody's read a book, and then they've gone and seen the movie, and they go, oh, they left so much out. Well, I mean, there's a reason for that. Or, because not every subplot, not every scene, not everything in a book will translate well into a movie. And then the other thing is you don't want to have somebody have to sit in the theater for 8 hours to watch the screenplay of your work to do it justice. So in that respect, I think you're absolutely right. There's going to have to be somebody much, much better than me, even if I'm in on the process of creating a screenplay for my work. So it seems, that's a great idea that you just gave me, having enough people around so that they, enough people with enough experience. And which kind of begs the question, do you think that you would be a good collaborative writer? So let's say you had a writing team, and not necessarily for a screenplay, but do you think you could be a collaborative writer for a novel? Or do you think that you have to kind of chart your own course?
Oh, I love to write. I like when a writer, I haven't worked with, amateur writers like me, but I've worked with accomplished writers who have asked me, like I said, for notes or something on something they're working on. Like Don Salmon came to me and asked for me to write some treatments and some notes, and I did, and he went on to do stuff with them. So in that and I've worked with other writers who are accomplished too. That's always a fun process to sit down with 2 or 3 or 4 writers and come up with something. I can honestly say my experience so far of being on the fringe of working in the entertainment industry, and I'm on the outskirts, but as
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can. Yeah.
Sorry, did I lose you?
No, you're. Well, we didn't hear anything that you said up to "Can you hear me?"
Oh.
So go ahead and say what you said before.
It's been fun working with people. Where I'm at on the fringe, I'm on the outskirts of Hollywood, sort of working with people who are really the machinery of behind the scenes of doing stuff. But to work with those type of writers and listen to them and to come up with something is fun. And I think that's a good process. I think that should be the approach with stuff. I have no problem collaborating, and just to grow as a writer, I'm not. So, I had an experience with, I'll give you this example. I had an experience with Fiesta Studios with John Mercedes, and I read that whole thing wrong. Without going into the nuts and bolts of it, I was supposed to sit down and do certain things, and he was telling me straight, and I just read it wrong and messed it up. So, and that taught me that you can't be looking at, like I said, like at the beginning of the show, don't be worried about money and rights and royalties and all that stuff. Worry about doing something productive, getting it out there, and the good stuff will come as you develop and become a better writer.
Right.
And that's the lesson I've learned, and especially if you're collaborating. Don't worry about somebody taking your stuff. I can tell you, I talked to, I wish I could name him, I won't name him because he's, I don't have permission to mention him, but he said one of his things he came up with, he was upset. It got took from him. It went to the theaters and it bombed. And he thank God he never put his hands on it. Thank God he never was associated with him, because you never know what's going to go and what's not. Okay, so you can't.
And the other thing is, once you sell an option to your work, you're not always guaranteed the opportunity to continue working on it when they convert your book to your novel to a screenplay. When you sell that option, unless you have a fairly unusual contract, you're done. And then people take your work and they can do anything they want with it. So that's always a danger too. If you're fortunate enough to be able to produce your own work, you have a little more control.
Yeah, that's true. You ever see the movie What Just Happened with Robert De Niro?
Just happened. I don't know.
If you want to know how producing stuff in Hollywood works, from what I've witnessed, that movie is dead on. And there's a saying in Hollywood: throw a stone and you'll hit a producer. So
yeah, of course. Yeah.
But options are, when it comes to getting a book to screen, what makes a good option is your attorney. Your entertainment attorney, and if that entertainment attorney knows intellectual property, then you're good to go.
Right.
So that's my feeling there. And yeah, that's my feeling there. It's better. I don't think that you should option. My advice to a writer, if somebody likes their story, is get hired by that film industry. So Sony comes to you. Sony probably a bad example because they just got hacked and everything, but just they came to the top of my head, so I'm going to use them. If Sony comes to you and says, "I like your story. I want to produce it and make it a movie," say, "Fine, give me a 10-year contract on a job as a writer." You got a deal.
Yeah, but sometimes nobody wants to deal with writers. All right, let's be honest. That's why publishers. That's why publishers, by and large, don't talk to writers. You know why? Because writers are little troll-like people who have sometimes non-standard and hard to deal with egos. Well, I'm just being honest. I talk to my publisher. My publisher is essentially a fulfillment house right now. I'm self-publishing. And when I talk to these people and they're based in the Philippines, they are so obsequious. They are so nice. They are so, please and thank you and all of that. And the reason why they're like that and the reason why they're trained that way is because authors are psychotic little monsters in most cases. and they're not going to like me saying that, but it's true. I went to a networking meeting here in Chicago, and Tim Kazurinsky from Saturday Night Live was there. And this little monster troll of a writer, and he was scary. I would not let him in my house. He asked Tim, "Hey, when someone options your movie, can you put in the contract that you have to be on set all the time to make sure that they're doing the movie the way I want it, doing my story the way I want it?" And I didn't laugh out loud. I went, "Oh my God," but writers are a very needy lot because writers generally are insecure. I'm an insecure writer. The worst thing in the world is if somebody says something bad about what I wrote, because in large part, as much as I try to divorce myself from the content and divorce myself from the work, it's a validation or an invalidation of self. So that's why you don't get these especially Hollywood. Hollywood is so risk averse because they're talking about so much money. They have their process, and their accommodation to writers is pretty well known to be almost non-existent. But if you get lucky, like you said, if you can get them to hire you, or if you have a great intellectual property lawyer, and that should be a word to the wise to people out there. When you're negotiating for something like an option on your work, or even negotiating for someone to maybe use your work in any way possible, if you don't pay for a good lawyer to look out for your best interest, you pretty much deserve what you get. And have you seen that yourself?
Oh yeah, these are lessons I had to learn. The 6 things you got to do. Network wise, if you're not on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, then and you want to be a writer, then open those accounts now. And if you want to be a successful writer that can go all the way to the top, my advice is, because I believe this, is get an agent who can represent you to TV and film, get an entertainment attorney, and get a person who knows about soundtracks and music adaptation. A concept artist for anime or drawings, for film or for book covers is also another get you need to do. Those are things you should be working on to have, to help make the processes easier. I can say this though. Yeah, you're right, Bobby. I've been to so many functions where I hear the writers talk, and I can see why you say that about the writers. But the successful people that have been around in writing forums or in acting forums or whatever, you know what a quality they all have? I mean, the people who are really up there, they're all very nice. And so you learn. So I've learned that be a nice person, be a good person. Don't be so mine. And it took me a while. I'm one of those beady writers you're talking about in my first book and stuff. Remember I was telling you about Michael Steinberg telling me, Mike, that's not, you can't go in that way. And it takes years is it years or is it development? I don't know which. But you got to get to the point where you're comfortable with yourself enough to say, okay, this is my story. I'm going to do the best I can with it and try to take it as far as I can, and then I'm going to move on to another story, and then I'm going to move on to another project. And I'm going to work on one story at a time. And let me also say this, because this is something that I think throws writers and stuff too. Jonathan Chesner, who played Corky on Veronica Mars, he's a friend of mine. And he taught me something. He took me around to different venues of things where actors and musicians and stuff get together. And he taught me something. See this guy, Mike? This guy's talking about he's a producer, he's a this, he's a that, he's a writer, he's in everything. That guy, walk away. He's not working on one thing. He's not serious about a project.
Okay.
See this guy over here?
Yeah.
He's talking about one thing. He's working on one thing. He's got one thing he's got going. That's the guy you want to stand next to and listen to and talk to for a while and pick his brain about what's going on.
Sure. And the fact of the matter is, being a creative is tough because you would want to think, and I think this is what makes writers nuts, is, if you've got something great, but you can't get it out there for someone to see it, there's a huge frustration factor too. There are so many people who have great ideas, and we don't know them. We don't know about them. So I think the hurdle is figuring out, like you said, networking, getting next to the right people, things like that. But I would say I am. I can't think of the word, but I'm very happy to hear that a lot of the best writers that you found end up being, when you find out about them, end up being really nice people. And I would imagine, I try to be as gracious as I can with anybody who I find who's read my work, because I'm thankful for them supporting it. But at my best, I wonder, well, am I good enough? What's that guy, Stuart Smalley on Saturday Night Live, who was by, what was that? I can't think of the guy who played him. But, am I good enough, and do people like me, and things like that? The art of writing and the process of writing is one where you have to have a very, very strong sense of self to sustain you when you're not getting the reinforcement. I mean, it's great to get friends who will tell you, but I think you have had people, some pretty decent names, people who are well known, have taken a look at your work and have given you encouragement, and that's got to be such a boost to you keeping doing what you're doing, isn't it?
Yes, And in answer to your question of am I good enough, it's really that's not the question. The question is, has the world caught up to you?
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's where you should write from. I mean, you got to look at your writing as coming from that direction. Has the world caught up to you where you're at?
Mm-hmm.
Writers throughout history have been ahead of the curve. You know, really look at a lot of the work. Look at Star Trek. Look at the tricorder. That's the iPad, right?
Well, actually, the tricorder. I'm sorry. Yeah, the communicator was the mobile,
mobile phone. You know.
Yeah, the Motorola flip phone.
Yeah. See.
Yeah.
So the world's got to catch up to where you're at, sort of. I think that's a better way. Or the world does. You know, sometimes people. There's, they call it the Dead Poets Society for a reason. Those poets were great then, but nobody knew them until after they died. You know?
Right. And there's a lot of people who their written work, their novels were suddenly discovered when they died. When they died, somebody said, "Oh yeah, well what did so and so write?" And then they look at it, and then all of a sudden there's kind of like, it's kind of like that morphic field where a lot of people discover them all at the same time, and it is tragedy that in some cases, their death precipitates their popularity.
Right. So there is I like to try to stay in the positive realm, but I can honestly say that I strongly believe has a future, and it's going to explode. I think there's a craving for it, and I think you're right where you need to be, and you need to be patient and let the world catch up. So it's not a question of are you a good enough writer? You are a good enough writer, absolutely.
Yeah,
Writer's right.
And I think that the insecurities in creatives are ones that, one would hope, like for me, I hope that I'll be less self-critical and more confident and not so needy in terms of having someone else's acclamation in order for me to feel like I do well or something like that, I do know a couple of my good friends, have written books, and these are people from like my just post-college past, and they never really caught on, and they quit, and they weren't sci-fi, but I mean, you hate to see maybe a lack of critical acclaim stop somebody from creating, well, unless they're really horrible. But, everybody's got something. Everybody's got something to say. It's just, are you saying it in a way that other people find laudable or other people are interested in? Before we get too much further, let me ask you this. You've got the books out. You're working in screenplays and things like that. When you think about what you're going to be doing for the next 5 years or so, where do you think that your efforts are going to be directed?
Well, I'll continue to write, but now, I write for me now. I like Amazon because it's a convenient way to get exposed and get some exposure out there and to write. But I'm a writer, and I write, and that's what I do. But I'm doing it from that standpoint, not from, of course you hope that it will become fruitful and that you'll big business, and it doesn't hurt to dream. But you at some point in your life, you have to decide, are you a writer or are you not? And if you're a writer, then you're going to write, and if you're not, so that's where I see it going. And also, keeping the 9 to 5, right?
Sure. Are you able to support yourself right now with your writing, or are you working toward that?
Oh, no, I haven't been. I wish I was. No, I'm working towards that. Yeah. I'm working towards that. Like, I think there's a lot of writers out there who aren't. But, I work. My degree's in planning, public policy management and planning from University of Southern California. I currently I volunteer for the Joining Forces Alliance that was started by Michelle Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama and Dr. Jill Biden.
Okay.
As a mentor for military families. And that's what I do, and I help raise my 2 young boys. And
how old are they?
They are 14 and 9, and I homeschool.
Okay.
And, yeah, that's right. My wife's a soldier.
I mean, it sounds like you have a fairly full life there. If you take a look at, let's say, a week's time, about how many hours during the week are you able to devote just to writing, where you can sit down and not have to worry about anything else maybe pulling you away from it?
That makes me laugh because have you read the book by Walter Mosley, who's one of my favorite writers, Walter Mosley? This year you write your first book?
Walter Mosley, I've talked, as a matter of fact, in the last year I've talked to him twice at Chicago State University.
Yeah. Well, every one of my books has a quote from him in it. So at the beginning, when you open the first cover, there's a quote from Walter Mosley. And that quote is, we shouldn't consider heroes to be saints. And I love that line from him. And anyway, in it, he talks about close the door, let the paint peel off the walls, and grow a beard if you have to, get it all down, And I've never, all my time with work and kids and family and everything else, like what everybody has, I've never had that convenience of being able to write without something happening. The phone's going to come on. Time Warner cable's going to go out. Something's going to happen. I'm going to burn the mac cheese on the stove, something. So,
right.
I haven't had that, that long. What I do, which is a habit now, I get up early in the morning. If I get up at 3, or 3:30 or 4, I do go downstairs, and that is my best writing time. I'll get a couple of hours in before everybody wakes up.
I work the other end of the clock, but I also live alone, so it's much easier for me. I don't go to bed till 2, 3, 4 in the morning sometimes. But I do understand that whole quiet time because it does lend itself better to being more creative, but also being able to get a lot done because there's not other things pulling you left and right.
Right. Another thing I like time to go by when I'm writing a story. I think it helps. I think stories are like wine. They need to breathe. They need some time to develop. So for a 50,000-plus word book, for 100,000, 200,000, whatever, I think you need a year. You need 9 months to a year to get it right. That's me. That's how I look at it. I know other people can do it faster. Like I said, there's people who can put out books fast and write really well books. But for me, my development process is if it takes a year, if it takes 9 months to 12 months, I know that book is done well. So I think that's where I'm at with it. I know that I can write about 7,000 words a week.
Well, that's respectable. That's 1,000 a day.
Yeah, but I don't like to do that. I like time to go by. I like if I have an idea and I write the whole scene down and everything that's happened, dialogue and everything, and leave it there. I might blow past so many thousand words, but then I stop, right, and I wait for other things to accumulate and more ideas and my thoughts to see where this is going and stuff, and then I come back to it. So time can be a good friend when writing a story to me.
Yeah. Speaking of which, when you talk about time, do you spend any time going to, any sci-fi conventions, any writing conventions, or not writing conventions, but any of the Comic-Cons or anything like that to meet, to press the flesh or maybe meet readers?
So San Diego Comic-Con is probably the biggest thing is what I go to. I don't go to the other writing forums and stuff. I did in the beginning, but it seemed to me to be and I mean no offense when I say it, but it seems to be like the same old rant.
Okay.
Eventually, when you start writing, it's just you, the ink, the paper, and the screen, and the keyboard. I mean, I you listen to others and their advice, and you get your thing. But I think that, like, once you become comfortable with yourself and you understand that you're going to write this story, this is your story, and you're going to write it the way that you feel it should be written.
Right.
And you're going to try to do it in a manner that's respectable as far as, grammar, diction, overused words, however you want to look at the technical part of it, Chicago manual style, whatever. Once you get there, then you can really be doing some writing. I'm not a big believer in the forums and stuff too much. I like Comic-Con because you get to meet people, you get to see other stuff.
Right.
And you can set up there. I did set up Comic-Con. I did have Paradox there, and I got invited back. I met the guy who played Punisher and who was in the HBO series Hung, Thomas Jane. He's really cool. And he's a good friend of mine who I grew up with, Timothy Bradstreet and some others. And I got to see Tyrese behave from afar, sort of like just look at him in the booth and see how nice he is to people. Lucy Liu is awesome. Made sure she signed every single child's autograph.
Wow.
She gave an autograph. So I mean,
That's type of cool.
Those are priceless, like little things I think can only really happen at a Comic-Con, I think,
Right.
Right.
And do you look forward to the day when your work is, something that people are going to laud at in that kind of venue?
Oh, sure, yeah. Like I said, I think if you're a writer, you're a dreamer. You gotta be. So you hope, yeah, it can get there. You work towards there, but don't. Let's say something happens, God forbid, and I'm not here tomorrow. I'm
right.
content. I am content with what I've written.
Okay.
And I'm happy with the connections that my writing lifestyle has developed, and I'm happy with the intellectual gain that I've gotten from writing. So I'm content.
You mentioned working with school-age kids. Tell us a little bit more about that. How did that come about?
A principal asked me, and actually other writers in the community, to come and talk to the kids about writing to help push writing and stories and stuff. That's big in schools now, getting kids to, more into language and writing. And so, that type of creativity. So an assistant principal named Abigail asked me first, and then that spread to a high school, and then, it's like wildfire. After they get you, it's over. If high school teachers get a hold of you, watch out.
Okay.
So my wife, I'm saying that my wife right here, she was a teacher before she was in the Army, so.
And what's the best part about that process? What's the best part about working with the kids for you?
Because they think out of the box, and they're not bound by. I think as an adult we have these parameters we set up, these borders. We don't even realize we're in them. The children don't look at the world through that lens, and so they're very creative, and they're able to say things and do things that you wouldn't think of, And and also, but the best thing about working with kids is, especially today, like I went to USC. At USC, I was almost 40. I didn't graduate till 40.
Okay.
One of the best things sitting in those seats, watching the children around, it tells me there is hope for humanity and the earth. There are some very bright youth who really are ahead of the curve. So, and whether it's in an elementary school, a junior high, a high school, or college, I'm always impressed when I go there and see all that talent in one place. And that tells me there is hope, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Do you see maybe somewhere down the road becoming, maybe formalizing your teaching with them or anything like that?
Oh man, it's funny you say it. My mom's a teacher, was a teacher for over 20 years in Champaign Public Schools in Champaign, Urbana. My wife was a teacher. Her mom was a teacher. My sister's an administrator in Chicago for Chicago schools. So
okay.
I always said I wasn't going to be a teacher because everybody around me was. Especially if I wasn't going to be, marrying my mom, but it seems like I did anyway. But no, I'm only teaching to the teachers. But
Okay.
I like working with kids. I work with at-risk youth at the border when I work with AmeriCorps. Yo trabajo por 4 años a las fronteras on the San Isidro, Tijuana, Mexico border. So, and that was very rewarding. It still is. I still get a lot from that. And so I like working with youth, especially at-risk youth. I believe I was at risk in the beginning. I don't like to see children fall through the cracks. So if I can give back and help there, I will.
Man, that's great. And so your wife is still in the service. What is she also in the Marines or what branch?
No, she's in the Army. We're on an Army base.
Okay.
Yeah, she's in the Army.
Okay.
In Army,
and what is she?
Army people don't like Marines. Soldiers have a problem with that. I sleep with one eye open. I sleep with one eye open, man, just in case.
So how do you two get together?
Basically, she had me in the headlock. I couldn't breathe. She made me take her last name. I had to hyphenate. That was about it.
Oh man, that reminds me of, what was that movie? Hot Tub Time Machine, where I think it's Craig Robinson's character, had a hyphenated last name, and everybody made fun of him. But it seems to be happening more and more and more.
Yeah, I mean, she's great. We met, and at school actually, the second college I was going to, Illinois State University, and yeah, that's where we met. In March will be 19 years.
Wow! Congratulations, man. Seriously.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
Okay, so now you've got. The other thing is, do you have a regular editor who helps you with your work, or are you that good that you don't need one?
Between my wife correcting me every day and Pro Writing Aid and Grammar Jammer and other resources online, just me and that. That's it. Although Cherie Renee Thomas did edit The Forgotten Prince, the first draft she edited.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, what kind of feedback do you get from people you don't know about your work?
Oh, you mean, like who haven't read anything?
Like reviews, or if anybody catches you online or something like that, because you did mention that you rely on social media.
Yeah,
no, I was curious what kind of feedback you get through your social media channels.
It's been mostly positive. Now, I did get, I think I've had one interview from an East Indian magazine that also has a website. I did a couple of years ago. And there's been, you can see reviews on Amazon, and
sure.
So the reviews have mostly been positive, I think. Let me see, I did run into, there was one negative one, I think, when I went into a bookstore and I said, I asked to see their kiosk because I was seeing if I could look up my book on their kiosk.
Right.
And I said, yeah, I write science fiction. And the lady told me that there is no black science fiction.
Oh, man. Well, I would hate to have to admit, but I've heard that from 2 bookstores as well.
Yeah, so, it makes you laugh, Oh, really? Oh, okay. But, yeah, that's probably the most negative. And I don't even dwell on those things. I try to stay in the positive realm.
Right, but the kind of feedback that you're seeing in social media is positive, and I'm sure it also helps kind of keep you going, because it's an affirmation of your skill as a novelist, right?
Yeah. Social media is mostly positive, and I don't know if that's skewed or biased, but it just is. It's mostly positive, and it's going to be definitely more positive than a publisher.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, than those rejection letters you're going to get. And
well,
unless
like
you're, I mean, let me say for me, the rejection letters I've gotten, because other people are, better writers. There's other writers out there who are great, and so they can write a publisher and get published. So
right.
keeping that in mind.
Well, I've found that, as you said earlier in the show, publishers, it's about everybody in the chain of command at a publisher is there as a gatekeeper because, well, for whatever reason. I mean, that's just the way the industry has been for the last generation. And getting in, the catch-22 that I have found is you can't get a publisher unless you have an agent, because they'll talk to agents. They won't. Again, we as writers, we have weird expectations. We don't know the business as well, things like that. So they would rather not talk to authors directly. But then getting an agent, in most cases, it's very difficult to get an agent unless you've already published. So there's that kind of spiraling catch-22 that I think people without a lot of persistence and people who don't realize that you really have to jump through a lot of hoops, make a lot of contacts, write a lot of letters in order to get someone to even look at your work. So that can be daunting, especially for someone who's written their first book. When you wrote your first book, tell us a little bit. We've got about 10 minutes to go. Tell us a little bit take us through the process that you went through getting that first book out there. You write the book, you apply your tools to it, you clean it up, you show it to your friends, and then what happens?
And then you get the feedback, and you discover where you went wrong in the story, the mistakes that happened. My first book was, to me, a disaster. But it taught me a lot. And then now comes the growing part. First, you get the sting of, and which hurts, and it takes you some time to digest it, of
right.
What might have been, what should have been, what might have been, and then you grow, and you say, okay, well, the next time I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and that's how you get better. Going back to the daunting task of getting an agent and stuff, I've had the blessed opportunity of, like I said, being around some pretty savvy people, thank God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And let's not look at getting an agent as having to write letters. Let's look at it as putting in some sweat equity. I didn't get my Joseph Bavino and Nadine Hamden through writing a letter. I really didn't.
Right.
It was sweat equity. They saw me pushing and asking and working and trying to get, and then that's how somebody referred me to Joseph Bavino.
Mm-hmm.
And then Joseph Bavino referred me to Nadine. So, again, if you're working and pushing and you're putting in the sweat of getting yourself out there and working on it and talking to people and
developing a network and stuff, people will get you in contact with the right people. Not in contact with the right people. That's the absolute wrong way to say this. There's always somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And
right.
There's people who have their set networks themselves. And when they decide that they like you and what you're doing and they support it, they insert you into their network, which connects you to the next person, which connects you to the next ladder up, the next step on the ladder up. So if you're out there and you're trying to get the agent and you need the intellectual property or entertainment attorney and you need the other people that can add to your work and make it better, look at what am I doing with my work to get it out there, to push it, to talk, to show it to people who I know who might be interested, or when people tell me they're interested, ask them who they know and how it can go further so I can work it, just work that system until you connect to the right people. Because word of mouth from a friend who refers you to somebody and says, hey, this is a good fella, is a lot more powerful than you writing a letter and sending a manuscript in the mail trying to get picked up.
Sure. So
that's
for you, the networking aspect of being a content creator and getting your name out there is a vital component of being an author.
Absolutely. You got to put in the sweat equity. It's not going to come to you. It doesn't. You got to get out there. You got to talk. You got to hit the pavement. It starts with, like when you were talking about the writing forums and going to listen and going to writing groups and that, it starts with there, right?
Right.
But then you got to get going, okay? And you can and don't ignore the business side. And start looking at making connections from marketing, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to promotion to like agents, legal. Don't leave any part of it out. There's some person in your family who's probably working directly with a part that you need.
Right.
And can give you some guidance or direction or connect you themselves to what you need to help enhance what you're trying to do. So definitely I think that is very key. I call it sweat equity because that's what it is. You're going to sweat doing it.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of people, you know, when they set out to do their first screenplay or they have their first novel, a lot of them just don't realize how much effort goes into, you know, the part B of being a creative, which is basically you are an entrepreneur and you're creating a business and you are the business that you are selling, you know, your creativity, your intellectual property. And there's a lot of, I mean, there's untold amount of effort that goes into maintaining that relationship. Like, for example, at the point where you're at now, you're 20 years down the line, and part of your continuing sweat equity is the maintenance of your social media, you know, staying in touch with the people. And
right.
So that is an actual business component that people have to look at. They have to find out if that suits them. You know, where does that fit into their overall business strategy, and then go on to acquire the skills to manage that effectively. You know, a lot of people can get on Facebook. A lot of people can do, what is that thing? Twitter. But using them effectively is a whole other story. And I think that kind of education, that kind of learning about the business is something where people don't naturally get training. And again, that's where the networking part comes in. You know, maybe you can go to a group and they could say, well, these are some things that we have found successful. These are some things that we have not. I'm sorry.
Right. That's where Black Science Fiction Society comes in. That's where being on the website, chatting with others, them telling you their experiences, you telling them yours, making those connections, so vital for you to move ahead, so vital to get you to where you're going as a writer, so vital to give you that self-esteem boost and to let you know you're on the right track. You're doing the right thing. Yes, you're good enough. The world needs to catch up to you. You're in the right place.
Right. You know, I think I'm going to visit that site and check it out. We've got just a few minutes to go before we grab Jarvis, bring him in, and have him tell everybody, everybody up to date on the various things going on the site. If you had one overriding piece of advice that you would like to give creatives who will listen to this, who are listening now and will listen to this as a podcast, what was the most valuable lesson you learned, in the last 20 years of being a creative?
That you're not alone. You have a network. You have people who are supporting you, and you need to thank them at every opportunity, which I'm going to do right now. But networks are so important. People who have reached out, reached down, help pick you up, lift you up, keep you going, vital. That network aspect, don't ignore it and build it continually. I want to thank my family, like I said, Nadine Hamden, Euphoria Media Group, Joseph Bavina, Yapa Bandanda, Timothy Bradstreet, Don Salmon, Keith Hamilton Cobb, Sophia Stewart, Cherie Renee Thomas, Billy Bob Thornton, I can't say enough about him, Janice Dickinson, Junto Box Films, which is helmed by Forrest Whitaker, all of them so vital. My overseas network of Gina S. Wong, the Pineapple Express, Judson Vaughn, Bridget Millar of Harry Potter, Henning Ludvigsen, and, of course, Amazon. And the advice I give is, I hope people take advantage of the Amazon exposure while you can get it. I don't think it's going to stay open and last like this. So take advantage while you can. Get your stuff out there. Continue to visit Black Science Fiction Society, and let's all network together and create like a toolbox of best practices or the best way to go about things to help build each other up. I think that's where it all starts. And not just starts, but that's where things can grow. And that's just that is one of the reasons why I feel I'm, at least to this point, the networking aspect.
It might be of great value. No, it would be of great value if you would take the time to maybe do a forum post in the Self-Publishers Coalition forum group or whatever it's called. I don't have it in front of me. But to actually tell the story of your experience with Amazon so people can see, what it is you're talking about and assess the value it would be to them. Because, from what you say, it's a great resource. And for the newer writer especially, because it does give you visibility in places that you wouldn't have it otherwise. So if you would kindly consider doing that, I think that would be very helpful. And I know that any substantive discussion of that, Jarvis would definitely highlight and make sure that the rest of the membership sees, because it sounds like a great deal. It really does.
Yeah, and so I have no problem doing that. It's the least I could do. And I want to thank the Black Science Fiction Society again for having me on. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all of their support, and they've been supporting me. So I can't say enough about that. And again, without people supporting you, you're just not going to do well.
Yeah. Well, look,
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being on, because, you shared some really great stuff. Plus, you have a great story to tell, and that's what we're looking for, and that's what we want to give the people who we serve, and the people who stumble upon us and find us by, deliberate search. So again, our special guest for tonight is Michael Gill Branion, and author, screenwriter, and man about town. And I don't. There's no hating on you for having left Chicago, ending up where you ended up. People have to come and go, and but I do want to wish the best to you and your family, and thank you. And then please hold on after the recording, and we'll have a little brief conversation. Okay.
Okay.
And it's time if Jarvis has not taken a nap, if he's not asleep, if he's not downstairs getting some Little Debbies or something, hopefully he'll give us a quick overview on the doings going on and take us on out. Jarvis?
Well, thank you. I actually have Oreos today.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, my wife is spoiling me. She gave me Oreos. But that was a great interview as always. We have some great talent on the site. I tell people that we have the most talented people on the planet on Black Science Fiction Society. And I really believe that because we have over the last almost 7 years, it'll be 7 years in March, where we pull Black talent from around the planet together in one place and have shared information with each other. But that was some awesome information. Michael, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your time with us. And William, as always, keeping it entertaining. He's a skilled interviewer, and I'm glad to have him, and I'm blessed to have him as part of the team on here. And all the other people that, are involved in the project that don't get to go on air. They're sharing the stuff on Facebook. They're sharing information on Twitter and their websites and everything. And thank all of those people for participating and for coming on the show and listening. Now, with that said, I'm gonna just try to keep it a little brief, but we've been able to pull some really cool stuff off over the last few years with the site itself, with the radio show, with the magazine, with the anthology series, and more recently, a future fiction site where we pull the top people that produce on the site and publicize their stuff on an exclusive site. And that's been one of the new things that we want to push this year. Also, have several other things, which one of them we pulled out the hat last night, which was monthly workshops. We're going to have monthly workshops to help enhance what we already know in terms of creating sci-fi and sharing that information. So I'm excited about that. Last night we had Keith Young, and he was giving us some information on game design, something that a lot of us are interested in and we're excited about. I mean, we have so many people that play video games. I mean, millions of dollars are being made off of us, but we need to get involved in being producers as well. I'm bringing back the monthly newsletter. I wanted to do it in January, but it looks like it's going to be the first week of February. But we have a newsletter function that we haven't been utilizing that much. We want to bring it back to keep everybody up to date on what's going on the site. Seasonal. One new thing, we want to do a seasonal fundraising campaign, sort of like how NPR does it every season. They just take some time out for a few days and raise money for NPR, and that pays for that season. So that's something we want to start doing so that we can do even more on the site. We're looking into becoming either LLC or a nonprofit because we don't want the momentum that we built up over these last few years to suddenly come to a halt if something happens to me or William or or other key members of the site. So we want to make this into an official organization so it can continue well beyond our years. And lastly, let me throw these last two things in. Partnerships with the bookstores. We want to move on that. Cooperative print flyers. Something I've done in the past I've done it with the East Coast Black Age of Comics and with OnyxCon. We did cooperative flyers where we split the price of maybe 5,000 flyers, and they had one side, we had one side. So we want to start doing that program again so that everyone gets the benefit of being a member of the site and getting their stuff publicized. And lastly, a Black Sci-Fi Tour. Something last year I was blessed to be able to go to 4 or 5 events. And a lot of us want to go to these different events, but we don't have the resources to do that. So something I was looking into was cooperatively sharing the Black science fiction space with select members that or producers. They've proven that they can produce and are interested in attending these different conferences. So with that said, that was a lot of stuff. I tried to cram it in really quickly, but those are some of the things that we've done and that we want to do this year. So that's our manifesto for this year.
And briefly, where are we at with the movie?
Oh, man. That's one of the most important things. I'm sorry. Man, we're almost done with the storyboards, and Quasi Jackson is doing the storyboards. We have a team of about 10 people, maybe 12, maybe up to 12 by the time the film is over. But we've been doing the storyboard, almost done. Once the storyboards are done, we're going to immediately start the animation. So what I've been doing is organizing all the assets that we've acquired over the last year. We ran a campaign last year in March and April where we raised several $1,000s toward the film project. So we've utilized those funds to acquire 3D software and images and sounds and all this great stuff and equipment, audio recording equipment and stuff, and to make the film jump off the way it should. And I'm really, really excited about that because last weekend, we're probably going to do it again this weekend. On Sundays, we've been meeting on the project and bringing each other up to date on everything. We were doing some live motion capture last weekend here at the house, so we're going to probably do some more of that. Never have too much practice or fun doing live motion capture at home. It's great to be able to take the 3D characters that we've created and just move around in the room doing gestures and motions and dances if you want to, but having that happen right before your eyes is amazing. And that's some of the technology that we're putting into the film. And if you get an opportunity, go to www.earthsquadron.com. We have some information on the site as well in the Earth Squadron group, but we focused all of the assets and things of that nature on earthsquadron.com, where it's easy in one place to just view everything quickly.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And tell everybody about your new toy that's on its way.
Oh, man. Okay. And here's the preface. A few weeks ago, I was privy to a 3D printer, and I was able to print one of the characters at low resolution on a 3D printer. And I was so moved about that. In addition to experimenting with toy creation as a little hobby on the side for a few years, I've went ahead and decided and today pushed the button on acquiring a 3D printer of my own so that we can make prototypes of the Earth Squadron characters, in addition to characters for some of the people on the site that choose to work with us on developing their toys and making figures of their 3D characters or characters from their books and things of that nature. So I'm really excited about that.
As if you didn't have enough to do.
I told you, man, that undiagnosed ADHD is amazing.
Yeah, and sometimes if you don't take any drugs for it, you get a lot more done. Well,
that's how I've been able to pull it off. I've been avoiding. Refusing to take the drugs. Yeah.
All right. Well, as you see, a lot of things are happening at BlackScienceFictionSociety.com. We also have a YouTube channel now where one of our members, James, is turning each one of these podcasts into a YouTube video, but you don't get to see anybody. So we do have a channel for the Genesis Sci-Fi Radio Show. As always, tell your friends about the show, tell your friends about the site, And if you know other creatives who have not shown up yet, tell them a little bit about us and get them to join the site. And I guess since we're a few minutes over, I want to thank everybody for listening. Thank those of you who picked this up as a podcast, and tell your friends. And we will be back next Friday at 9 p.m. or thereabouts Eastern Time.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
On behalf of Michael and Jarvis, I wish you all, I'm going to just say it, a good night. Thanks
Good
much.
night.
Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night.